Okay. Next, we have Ashmeeta, an aspiring educator, grief support advocate, entrepreneur, and author. Ashmeeta is on a mission to reshape the way we view and heal from grief, drawing from her extensive experience in early childhood education and personal journey with resilience. She is the founder of Growth Story Hub, an organization dedicated to providing support and resources for those navigating loss. Please join me in welcoming Ashmeeta.
Hi, everyone. Give me a sec. Sorry, technical thing of the presentation.
And also, I have put Asmita's social media handles and her giveaway that she'll be doing during after her presentation in the chat for you guys.
So, mhm. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashmeeta Madhav. I am a resilience and grief support advocate. I've encountered many life-changing experiences from my early 20s. Things like miscarriage, rejection, the death of my parents, and my husband have exposed me to emotions of intense grief. Oh, excuse me. It gets me every time. Anyway, I felt stuck and I felt lost. So I ventured onto the path of self-discovery. And this path has taken me to various different spaces where I've learned to embrace my grief. Through this, I have founded an organization called Growth Story Hub that aims to provide necessary support, guidance, and resources for those grieving after loss. I understand the challenges of being a single parent and the impact of loss on one's life. Grief can be a challenging experience, and individuals need access to resources and support during this time. My organization aims to help empower individuals to take control of their experiences by offering tools and resources for navigating grief. Today, we are going to speak about various different explore various different topics on grief. The first is the need to grieve, understanding different types of grief, um, cultural attitudes towards grief, and we're going to end with practical tools to managing grief. So here's some pictures of my family. Top two pictures of my kids and my nieces, as well as my brother, my sister-in-law slash sister, and the kids. The bottom pictures on the very far right, well, that would be your left, is my mom who passed away in 2008. And then next to her is my dad who passed away in 2011. Sorry, 2021, sorry. And next to that is my husband with my daughter. I'm so sorry. This is really getting me. I'm surprised. Anyway,
Do you need a minute, Ashmeeta? Are you okay?
I'm fine. I'm just surprised. This was not
Yeah.
coming up for me when I was practicing. So this is interesting, but just take a deep breath and I'm fine. Yes, and next to my dad is my late husband who passed away in 2019 with my daughter who was 6 at the time. And the last two pictures are us on, one is a portrait and the last one is a family picture of us when we went to Alaska. So this is just my support and basically my family. An important quote that really resonates with me is the one that you see on the screen right now. The reality is that you will grieve forever. You will not get over the loss of a loved one. You will learn to live with it. You will heal and you will rebuild yourself around the loss and the suffering. This is from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it really resonates with me because of the journey that I've been through with grief since way before my mom actually passed away in 2008. So, what is grief? Grief is a natural response to loss. And for me, I think grief resembles, in many ways, a wound. And the reason I say that is because at the beginning of this year, I unexpectedly had a fall and sprained my ankle. And through that, I slowly got to realize as I made this analogy that grief has different stages, and I could relate those stages to the way a wound heals. So, stage one is the initial stage, which brings sharp pain that consumes your mind, triggers intense emotions like fear and anger, and can lead to questioning your beliefs, mirroring the overwhelming shock and vulnerability felt in early grief. Then in stage two, as the wound inflames, discomfort grows through thoughts are scattered, emotions swing unpredictably, and a sense of disconnection sets in, paralleling the intense and volatile early stages of grief. Stage three, as new tissues form and the wound closes, you gradually adjust, stabilizing emotionally, reconnecting spiritually, and finding moments of peace. Similar to how grief softens over time as you find ways to cope and move forward. And then the last stage is maturation. As the wound strengthens and becomes a scar, you adapt, find a new normal, and integrate the experience, just as grief becomes part of you without defining you, allowing you to carry your loss while moving forward. This is basically how I am at this present moment am viewing grief as I've experienced. That's the fall at the beginning of the year. It is almost 9 months down the line, still healing from that fall, but the progression is interesting to me, the way I've healed over time. So the next thing is understanding grief beyond death. Grief is not limited to the death of a loved one. Grief can stem from life-changing experiences like divorce, miscarriage, job loss, and many other situations. The important thing is recognizing and validating these different types of grief. It is a crucial part for healing. Okay, so I've done a bit of talking there. Let's take a minute here and answer a quick poll. So type in the chat the corresponding letter of the answers to the question that you see on the screen. I'm going to read the question out. So the question is, which type of grief have you experienced the most? A, loss of a loved one. B, divorce or breakup. C, loss of a job. D, health issues. Or E, other. I'll give you a moment to respond to that. So, loss of a loved one and other, yes. A and E seem to be popular ones. So, yes, especially since the pandemic, that has been it has really come up with the amount of loss that people have experienced, losing loved ones, and this whole topic of grief and how trying to find ways to deal with it has really surfaced, which is great because I think that this topic is really underserved, and we do need to speak more about it and not be so afraid about grief and the pain that it brings with it. Our next question is, how familiar are you with the concept of anticipatory grief? Very familiar. A is very familiar. B is somewhat familiar. And C, not familiar at all. Okay, so I have a somewhat familiar as well as not familiar at all. So I am going to delve into those anticipatory grief. There are two other kinds of grief as well. And this is something that I have learned as I've been on my journey with grief, doing research, reading, as well as exploring my own thoughts and belief system. So traditionally, the stages of grief, as introduced by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, include, Google will tell us this, we can search it, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Recent perspectives suggest that grief is not linear, and I really do agree with that from my own personal experience as well, because I honestly did not go through the anger stage at almost not at all. I initially did go through denial, but it lasted very short. So I really do believe that it is personal to each person based on what's going on, your genetic composition, what's your frame of mind, your relationship with the person. There are many different factors. So this is just, these stages are more of a guideline to me than really a linear sort of step system where things have to happen, things happen in this specific order. But what I really wanted to speak about were the different grief, different types of grief. And for me, at the time when my husband was struggling with pancreatic cancer in 2018, the latter part of 2018, beginning of 2019, I did not even realize that this is something that was actually going on. I learned about it later on as I did my research, but anticipatory grief. This is something that occurs before an impeding loss occurs. I remember the feeling of just feeling so lost, feeling so that I had no control of anything that was going on around me. And the cancer, it was just such a difficult thing to deal with that it basically had control of us in so many ways. No matter what we did, it had basically said to us in unspoken words, I'm in control here and you're going to do what I'm saying, kind of a thing. It was a very interesting and nerve-wracking experience. Disenfranchised, disenfranchised grief is when society doesn't recognize our grief. This is also a different sort of grief. It is a reality. And I think for a person who is grieving, it is so apparent, and you walk around with this depending on your support system that you have, or what you've just your circumstances as you're grieving. A lot of times grief can turn into complicated grief, which is basically a prolonged and intense grief, making it hard for people to move forward. And as far as complicated grief is concerned, I have, in my own personal capacity, found ways to help myself, along with, going for professional help, also finding ways of holding myself accountable and finding ways to take steps to help myself initially before I even go out and venture onto the path. So a combination, actually, there is no one before the other. It's just a combination of helping yourself, but also going for professional help in places like support groups and individual counseling, reading up different blogs and that kind of stuff. So another poll. The first question that I have here, specifically more around just challenging around grief and what we were talking about. So which stage of grief do you find most challenging? We have the 5 general ones that Kubler-Ross suggested: denial, which is A; B is anger; C is bargaining; D is depression; and E is acceptance. Acceptance is definitely acceptance is what is coming up. Bargaining, yes, yes, that is so true. In my own as I said earlier, in my personal capacity, bargaining did come up for me. Denial, when my mom passed away, was a thing for me. That was my very, very first experience with death up close and personal. Especially since the relationships that I had with her was so close, and she was my best friend. She was my confidant, the person I turned to for things that I needed, advice that I needed and things. So that knocked me really well, and really knocked me, sorry. And acceptance is difficult. That is something, in my personal experience, has taken a really long time to come to terms with. Acceptance it can come up in different forms. Recently, with the loss of my dad, my husband, and then my dad, sorry, I don't know what that was. Acceptance shows up in different ways for me. So I'm going to move on with the next question. So have you experienced any stages of grief that are not part of the traditional model? A, yes; no; B, no; or C, not sure? So, grief, aside from the 5 stages that Kubler-Ross suggests, there are other things that have come up in my Google search. I see other options, other stages that people that I have read about. So they definitely are other stages that can come up. Anyway, I'm going to move on just so that I can keep in touch, respectful of the time here. So as I've been grieving and going on this path of this journey with my grief, something that I have put together that has helped me with just keeping my mind focused and helping me to snap out of getting into that victim mode is a little thing that I remind myself all the time, which you'd see on the screen there. So make loss a chapter rather than your whole story. By practicing self-care, you can empower yourself through pain and grow stronger. The possibility of hope is always within reach. I really do believe that experiences are there to teach us. And if we embrace that pain, which is really difficult, I do agree, it is difficult, but if we could just try to embrace the pain, it would actually be our teacher and help us to move and guide us along this path as we are living with grief. Because when you experience grief, when you experience loss, the grief that's associated with it basically is a new partner. It's a new part of you. It becomes part of you, and you walk with it every single day of your life as you experience life, as you go through things in life. So embracing it is, you would be doing yourself a great service. And I have found that by embracing grief, that has definitely helped me. So moving on to cultural attitudes towards grief. Cultural attitudes towards grief can significantly impact how we process our emotions and express grief. Some cultures encourage open expression of grief, while others may promote stoicism. Understanding these cultural differences can help us support each other. It is essential, it is absolutely essential to grieve. It helps individuals acknowledge their loss and process their emotions. Grieving is a step towards healing and finding closure. And what happens, basically, what happens when you embrace grief? By embracing, basically, you're acknowledging that this is a loss, this is a reality, and then processing the emotions that come along as they come along, not sort of, trying to fit things, sort of like trying to fit a square into a circle kind of a thing, just taking things one moment at a time as they come up, processing those emotions, and then as you process those emotions, empowering yourself with different tools, which we'll talk about in the next slides, that basically would help with finding closure and moving towards healing. So I have another poll. Do you feel that your cultural background influences how you express grief? A, strongly agree. B, agree. C, neutral. D, disagree. And E, strongly disagree. Yep. So I have a B, definitely strongly agree. As well as, so there's some people that strongly agree that cultural backgrounds influence how they express grief. And in my personal experience, I really do think as well that my cultural background influences the way I express my grief. And cultural background actually is twofold, because it is cultural in the aspect of the culture that I was born into, but also the culture that my immediate family and extended family, that I'm exposed to in my immediate family and my family. So if you're in a family system or a support system that encourages expressing yourself and open communication, that would definitely sort of guide the way you express your grief. But like I've read in some of my research, where certain cultures talking about grief is viewed as if you are living in the past, let it go, move on, that kind of stuff. Those kind of myths kind of come up, and it pushes a person into a very uncomfortable space. And with grief is something that it forces you to be in the present. So it is absolutely important to be aware while you're grieving, as things come up, to sort of entertain that just for a moment and ground yourself, get an internal check, and then decide what you're going to do with that emotion or that thought or feeling that has come up at that very moment. Anyway, the next question that I have is, how supportive do you find your community in times of grief? A, very supportive. B, somewhat supportive. C, neutral. D, not very supportive. And E, not supportive at all. So I have a lot of A's coming up here, very supportive. Um, Definitely grief when someone hears, that someone has lost a person. You, from my own experience, I have experienced total strangers coming to my rescue. Just a quick little story here. Uh, when my husband was struggling with pancreatic cancer at the time, before all of that, I was pretty active in the school, my kids' elementary and middle school, and had a good presence, part of the PTA, all of that kind of stuff. And the one day I had was going to school, and I stopped to speak to one of the members of the PTA, and she mentioned to me, I haven't seen you around. What's going on? And how we started talking, and before you know it, I expressed to her what was going on. This was around Christmas, and just before Christmas, actually. And to my surprise, this person had gathered a whole bunch of other people that she knew. And 12 days before Christmas, every single day, there was something turning up at my front door. Some sort of support, some sort of community from total strangers. This gesture just touched my heart, and it really made me feel so, um, not having any family, not having any of that people that I'm familiar with was very unsettling for me. But having this invisible community around me showing their support and showing up for me in this way was just, this is this is what human beings are capable of, and can do. So communities can be a real great support. So this is the part that I was looking forward to getting to. Tools for managing grief. For me, the biggest tool that has been helping me, especially since my husband has passed, is journaling and practicing gratitude to process my emotions. Therapy and support groups have provided a safe space for me to share my experience, and mindfulness and meditation have helped me to ground myself and to stay grounded. Things like breath work, exercise, being aware of my mental state, my emotional state, um, my physical body, basically how am I feeling physically, how am I feeling mentally, how am I feeling emotionally, doing a check of that nature with myself all the time through this journey. And I will continue doing this because this is a way to help me understand where I am at this very moment with my grief and with what is coming up for me. So in the same way, I've, by practicing these kind of things, being, self-compassion, being kind to yourself while you're grieving, not judging yourself, and a gratitude journal, aside from just using a journal for processing thoughts and putting down thoughts that are coming up for you, maybe having a section in that journal talking about gratitude. And gratitude can be about various different things. Gratitude about the very present moment, gratitude for the past, gratitude for the present, gratitude for the future, but always remembering that when we live, we are living in this moment. We are living in the present. So how is the past affecting my present? How is the future affecting my present? Keeping those thoughts in mind is very, very important as we grieve, walk down this path of the grieving as we grieve on this journey. Um, Last call. So, which tools or practices has been most helpful for you in managing grief? A, therapy or counseling. B, support groups. C, journaling. D, meditation. E, other. For me, as I mentioned earlier, journaling, meditation, and breath work, but most of all, just being aware and the whole idea of gratitude. Gratitude, a lot of times with the fact that after losing my spouse, having to redefine myself, redefine who I am. What does life mean for me now? Because I identified myself with being a mother, a wife, and the role that I played in my family. That role changed when my husband passed away. So um, that was something where I started practicing gratitude, just trying to help myself stay focused and stay in the present. I'm grateful. So one of the things that I would remind myself whenever I would feel like a victim or get into that victim mode is I'm grateful for the 23 years that I got to spend with my husband and the amazing relationship that we were able to nurture and develop together. And when I find myself going into the into the future and bringing myself back to the present, I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to, fill in the blanks. So kind of reframing gratitude, reframing our thoughts so that they don't become a mantra in our heads that weigh us down and pull us down and make us go into a downward spiral. Always taking those thoughts that come up, giving it a positive twist and taking it into a positive direction. So the next question I have for you is, how comfortable do you feel supporting someone else who is grieving? A, very comfortable. B, somewhat comfortable. C, neutral. D, somewhat uncomfortable. And E, very uncomfortable. So I have neutral, some responses that are neutral. A is very comfortable. I have a couple of options coming up. Supporting a person who's grieving is a very interesting, there are two different, and this is something I have noticed as I've walked down this path as well. Firstly, as a person who's grieving, trying to support another person who's grieving, and I found myself in that situation where a friend of mine lost her husband as well and turned to me for support. And as I was grieving, as I am supporting her and trying to show up for her and be there for her, because this is reminding myself that this is not about me. This is about me being there for her, which means I just need to be there. I don't need to inject my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings on her. It's just my presence and being there for her in the way that she needs me to be there for her, not the way I feel I need to be there for her. And at the same time, things are coming up for me. So trying to find that balance inside of me as I am grieving, but also supporting another person who's grieving was a very interesting space for me to be in. But I learned things about myself and I learned how I could actually find that balance and support others. So another question that I have for you here is how, oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, that was the second question. Yes. So I have basically gathered several resources. I've written a lot of different posts. As things come up for me, I, write blogs and post them on my website. A lot of those things, the various different podcasts that I've been on. My goal basically is to create a space where people can find understanding and comfort and to, provide advice and provide resources so people can help themselves as they're going down this journey, walking on this path with grief. This is, as I said, it's my new companion, grief. It's going to be with me as I walk as I keep living. And as things come up for me, I'm pretty sure things are going to come up for others. And I wanted to just create the space, put it out there to offer things for the world. A little poem that excerpt from a poem that resonates by Belinda Stotler. Shall I wither and fall like an autumn leaf from this deep sorrow, from this painful grief? How can I go on or find a way to be strong? Will I ever again enjoy life's sweet song? This is a thing that comes up, and I'm pretty sure, well, it comes up a lot for me. And life, as I said earlier, life is beautiful and it is meant to be enjoyed and lived. And the choices that we make is what makes life amazing. So, an experience like loss can really set us back. And if we let it engulf us and let it take control of us, and it can really take us down a path that we really don't need to be walking on. So, reframing grief, not allowing it to define or destroy us, grabbing onto that hope and finding positive ways um, is definitely helpful. So, I have an exciting giveaway. We're giving away an amazing prize, your choice of one free signed copy of my book or a 30-minute coaching call with me. Here's how to enter. Like this post, follow my account, and take part in the challenge on the next page. So the limited to one entry per person. Make it count. Lucky winners will be announced soon. Don't miss your chance. So let's get started. This is the guidelines for the challenge. My challenge for you: join our Grieve and Grow challenge to honor loved ones and create new traditions. This is how to participate. Post a photo or a video on Instagram or TikTok following the challenge guidelines. Use the hashtag Grieve and Grow Challenge and the hashtag Whole Being Wellness Journey in your caption. Tag 3 or more people and encourage friends to join. The goal here is to transform grief into growth through reflection, renewal, and creating beautiful new traditions. The challenge guidelines focus on your holistic well-being, mind, heart, and spirit. Engage in self-care practice that brings you peace, like meditation, journaling, or nature walks, etc. Reflect on your journey of grief and growth, sharing your experience and learning and lessons learned. Encourage and support others, letting them know they are not alone. So, thank you very much for hearing me out. I hope this has been helpful, and it has been a pleasure sharing my insights with you. And if you'd like to stay connected, these are my social media